Okay team, welcome. I've got a terrific presentation for you. I'm absolutely pumped, looking forward to share with you some insights into lifting your confidence level by how you go about using your body. Now, your non-verbals exude some level of confidence. Can I just throw to you for maybe one or two words that you'd say that you'd notice about a relatively confident person? What words would they be? Help me.
Shoulders are back.
Their shoulders are back. Yeah, they typically do use their body in those ways. Any other ones?
They're relaxed.
Yeah, they're relatively relaxed. Yeah, I think there's that happy medium between being confident but not overconfident, and typically not being slightly underconfident. Now, I've got a proposition for you that it's largely about how I use our body that will determine our confidence level. I think for some people, we may be thinking that a confidence level is a product of having deep, insightful knowledge or lots of information or dressing in a particular way. I'd like to dispute that by this presentation that I think is going to be powerful for what you do after you've finished with my time with me. So, I want you to look at a couple of slides, and I invite you to look at the first one. What would you notice about the slide? To me, one of the first things is the haircut on the man is a particularly noticeable one, and I did meet one of the team from your organisation that has very similar hair. I think you know what I'm talking about. So, what would you see when you look at this family portrait? It's hard not to notice that both of their eyes are looking in a fairly different way. And it might indicate there's some discomfort with the situation that they're finding themselves in. So your body sends signals. Your body sends silent messages, and your body is something I think can indicate levels of confidence or not. I put in another photograph. I don't particularly think that this one offers us a lot, other than I just think it's a very unusual family photograph. If you've got one like that in your album, I think probably throw it away, because it's probably not good for people to be looking at these sorts of things. A most unusual photograph. Now, if you look at this slide, what's Tom saying in this scenario? This is the part where we do a bit of audience involvement. What's Tom sharing here in this particular scene? Does anyone know it?
He's in love with Katie Holmes.
He's in love with Katie Holmes. We've got the famous scene where probably a quick reflection of this is, I've found Katie Holmes, I'm madly in love. And his body is exuding testosterone. And there's something about how he's holding his body that offer us something and some insights into levels of confidence, if only that relationship had have lasted. So here's a person that some of us might know of. There's a few people in this shot that I'd ask you to reflect up on. As we're very aware, this is one of the most powerful women in the Australian business community. The photograph of Gail Kelly. Now, Gail is with a guy called Dr. John Laker. Anyone know Dr. John Laker? He's the head of APRA, so a fairly important person, I'd imagine, for banks. And we have another banking individual over here, Mike Hurst, I think from Adelaide Bendigo Bank. Now, Gail's posture in this particular shot that was in the Financial Review only a week and a half ago that I sort of noticed, I think it's sort of indicative of a person demonstrating some power and demonstrating some confidence. We can see by the way she's gripping John, who is instituting, understand, some Basel III changes and, you know, making banks hold more liquidity around their capital. So I think there's some things about Gail's teeth as well that she's certainly letting John be very aware that she's in a powerful position. So sometimes I think we send messages that assist others when they see these about confidence level. So I'm not really here to talk about body language, I'm here to really talk about confidence. That sometimes our body is sending messages that are very useful for us to see. Many judgments are made around body language and how people hold themselves. The classic job interview where the person walks in with a similar CV as another, often the person in blind studies, when people are just observing an interview without being able to hear anything, they often prefer the person that tends to hold their shoulders back, that leans forward, is very good at being succinct and clearly explaining things, often using micro gestures. People that are somewhat unconfident will quite often have a slumped posture. Anyone ever sort of had the experience as well of maybe yourself going for a job interview? It's hard not to almost be sort of sitting on a chair with your head down reading your notes. What my proposition is that your stress level or cortisol level in your body, the hormones, the hormonal response to your posture is one about getting and increasing your stress level. And people will make some judgments on someone that is nervous versus someone that's confident very quickly in that first part of the conversation. Once those judgments are created, we find that very much that people look for data that validates those judgments versus for data to invalidate them. So first impressions are very, very important. If we are working in a sales role or a role where we're looking to claim additional value from customers, I do think that we need to be very aware of projecting a level of confidence. Not overconfidence, just an appropriate level of confidence. I always remember 15 years ago when I first started some consulting work, having a meeting with a guy called Harlis Malkic from Westfield Shopping Towns, and he was the head of human resources. And I had a meeting with him. I was a bit green and very new to the work, and it came down to the point where Harlis sort of said, "So Jeff, I'm liking what you've said about your program. How much does it cost?" And in him asking that question, I hadn't anticipated that happening with this very prestigious customer. And I almost sort of sat back, I looked down, I said, $1,000. And he said, "Well, I've got 16 people to do the program, so that's $16,000 for the day, is it?" I said, "Oh, no, that's $1,000 for the whole program." And he said, "I might get you to send me a quote and I'll have a little think about that." Now this story, I think, for me was quite meaningful because I think I projected as someone not worth $16,000 for the day. And in my mind, I recall thinking about that was almost my father's annual salary when I explained that. And what I've learned through my life is sometimes we need to fake some level of confidence. And not be unethical. If it was $1,000, it was $1,000, but I needed to say that in a really confident way, not in a way that was sort of pleading for some agreement. So if we're looking to claim more value, we notice that Mark Bouros, for example, is very good at projecting a good level of confidence. He had a recent TV show. What was that one called? Celebrity Apprentice. And he was probably selected for that because he has the ability to project a sound level of confidence without being overconfident. I love Alan Kohler, who does the Financial Report on ABC TV. Anyone seen Alan Kohler? A few of you have? Yeah, a few at the back especially. He's very good at building credibility and trust by how he has soft eyes and looking at camera, and he just explains his visuals in a really clear, succinct way. So, using your body and seeming confident can assist us with claiming more value. So, yeah, it's really interesting we noticed about birds and animals. They often try to make themselves as big as possible. If you look at the visual that have just popped up here, we've got a beautiful looking peacock. This peacock is spreading and fanning its feathers in a way that's absolutely remarkable. Birds try to make themselves look as big as possible, particularly when they want power and dominance to be projected. They want to seem confident. And I think we can learn some things about that. I think sometimes we need to make ourselves look big. Now that's not by overeating, and that's not necessarily what I think our aim in life is, but I think we need to think about situations when we need additional confidence to make yourself look big. We even see cats, even kittens, intuitively have a reaction in a situation where they're slightly fearful or uncertain. Well, they'll lift their back and they'll make themselves as powerful and dominant as possible. So my proposition is, if we need to project confidence, we need to think about projecting ourselves in a powerful way. But the proposition I have for you is that we shouldn't do that when we're confronted by the situation where we need to demonstrate this high level of confidence. We need to almost sort of get ourselves going before we're in the difficult situation. Because once your confidence is down, you may well win the person over in a job interview or whatever that situation is, your boss or your performance review. We need to be able to start with a position of confidence. So, Muhammad Ali, a very famous man, a man whose body doesn't work as well as it used to. He's very famous for many reasons, and one of those was when he caught aeroplanes. He was very famous for one particular story I'd share with you, and that is that he used to always book out all of business class and first class if he won a world championship flight. He liked to sit just with his manager at the front of the plane by himself. He particularly had a strategy that he used on an aircraft. That was to look confident. So Muhammad Ali used to often sit up the front. He'd sit on the plane, he'd put his feet up on the seats around him, and he'd lounge back with a couple of pillows as if he was in his lounge room. He projected a very sound level of confidence. I think his confidence is somewhat affected by a little story that has been shared by many people. You may have heard it before, that he had a flight attendant actually sort of say to him, "Sir, you'll need to put your feet down and put your seatbelt on because the flight's about to leave." And he said, "Madam, I don't need to do that. I am Superman." She said, "Muhammad Ali, you're not Superman, because if you're Superman, you wouldn't need to catch this flight. You'd fly there yourself." And I think it's a good little anecdote in terms of, whilst you're confident, you sometimes need to be sort of brought back to size, which he did. But a beautiful human being, and a great photograph of him using his body well, even underwater. Why is it that people, when they cross a finish line, raise their arms? Anyone seen this reaction before? Yeah, they raise their arm in a V shape. The interesting thing is blind people, I've heard, do this particular gesture when they win something. It hasn't been just they've observed someone doing it because they can't see. The V for victory is a symbol when people particularly are celebrating something. So what I'd get us doing is thinking through then, why is it that someone uses their body in a certain way? So, a couple of things around hormonal shifts and changes we can make in our body. Recent research is indicating that, as I mentioned before, that your testosterone levels can be lifted through doing certain gestures and body movements prior to a situation that you're feeling some level of stress. So, I think that's good to know, that I can lift my power and dominance score through what I do with my body. And I know it's a bit sort of, slightly lowbrow, but I actually want to go through with you a couple of thoughts on how you would go about doing that. What I think is also useful, and what's been reinforced by the research of a man called Martin Seligman, who wrote a book called Learned Optimism, is that if you have depression or you're flat, or anyone ever had a difficult period where you found it a bit hard to get out of bed? You sort of thought about some other options? Yes, some of these people have. Yes, I know. I've had this experience occasionally. They suggest that what you should do, Martin Seligman's research in Learned Optimism, is the number one way to overcome feeling very flat or levels of depression is going for a walk, talking to someone for a period of 10 to 15 minutes was considered as good a cure as antidepressants. And that's interesting. We need to use our body in a way. So the proposition I've got for you is that we need to think about lifting this score and reducing this score when we've got a stressful situation we're about to go into. I particularly would ask you to consider this question that I have on the slide. Does your body have a cortisol spike when you have a person communicating with you that offers you nothing? We've all probably had that meeting with a customer or an internal leader where you meet with them, you probably say something a little bit sort of upbeat or bubbly and they give you nothing back. There's zero facial expressions. No matter what you say, they just seem to absorb what's being offered. Having had some time in large Big Four banks, I particularly noticed that there's not a lot of responses typically given. Lawyers, solicitors, accountants typically don't give you a lot. And I think for a lot of people, they have this slight spike in stress levels where almost there could be a touch of sweating happens, or they feel a touch uncomfortable, and therefore they may be presenting their organisation's value proposition or an area where they're unique or different, and they can really struggle to do that particularly well. Because I think that sometimes their posture, their body, their stress level is being impacted by another person. And this is something that we need to be really aware of, because often the best conversations you have in life are the ones that it is slightly stressful and might be winning a big deal or a difficult situation. So my recommendation is to be, when the person is somewhat frozen we're talking to really make a great effort to amend our posture, to amend how we're sitting, and project a person of confidence. Don't worry about the words. The words will come from the confidence. Here's a couple of shots that we think are very useful in this area of lifting your confidence level. So I'll ask you at the moment to sit in a way that makes you big. So a lot of us in the room here, to sit in a way that makes you as big as possible. This would be a suggestion in a stressful situation that you're going into, is to sit really big. I almost think that this sort of posture of putting the feet up on the table and looking up is another one that can assist our testosterone spike and make us feel a bit more confident. We need to be very aware of, sometimes we've got a situation here of a very good, powerful gesture and body stance. I think this is the lady leading the IMF. And what we notice is that if we're very powerful in how we hold our posture, often we have a very non-dominant response like this, which could be perfectly fine. But sometimes when we're looking to be peers with the person we're talking to, we need to be very aware of how we're standing and how we're looking and holding our body. We need to be very aware of not doing these sort of postures, these sort of arms wrapped around the body. Typically this might be because a person's cold, but the proposition I have for you is the body is unaware of what it is that you're doing. The body will start to get smaller and your cortisol level could spike. So I lose slight levels of confidence, particularly when I start to put hands around heads, particularly when I lean over like this. If you look at this, have any of you had this experience of maybe during the day your slumpness kicks in? Anyone had this happen where you start to look down and down? I think some people, particularly wearing headsets, it's almost like the head starts to drop below the table. We can feel almost overwhelmed by what's going on in the day. So, I think we're all very aware of, school teachers sort of saying to us, sit up straight and be attentive. I wonder if sitting up straight can improve our level of confidence in a classroom. So, do our non-verbals govern our confidence level? The proposition I have for you is, when I stand like this, my suggestion to you is my body, my brain is unaware of my current circumstances. I may have a very positive hormonal response to standing in a way that indicates some confidence. If I'm sitting in a chair, I need to sit in a chair to make myself as big as possible, which is a bit unusual. I might look to sit in a stool versus a chair as well, because it's a bit easier to make myself look bigger. So, if we recognise this symbol, I'm sure a lot of us might have a word that comes to mind with this person here. What word, can I ask this audience, time for some audience involvement, what word might come to mind when you look at that particular picture?
Depressed.
Depressed? Yeah, not so positive. Another way to do this now is the person's body is reinforcing, increase the stress levels you're experiencing. For someone that gets slumped, you're reinforcing how you probably don't want your confidence level to be. We need to think about standing in a different way. Not to look like a fool or an idiot, but stand in a way to improve our capacity to feel more confident. So, the proposition I have for you is our bodies can change our minds. So this is the direct opposite of work from men like Dilts, who are sort of saying that our thoughts and affirmations and how we think can change your mind. Perhaps a shortcut to this is to just use our body in the way that a confident person would be using it. So, if you're looking for more presence, more confidence, more passion, and and more peaceful, comfortable comfort, we need to be thinking about how we use our bodies. An interesting tip I've noticed, that having done lots of speaking for many years, is I really noticed that even when you do a talk, it can be really beneficial to almost talk to one person at a time. And I think this is a strategy that assists with confidence. When people are speaking to a big group, they typically move their bodies around a lot, and they almost can't focus on anyone. So again, I think another reinforcer of the importance of using our body in stressful situations in the most positive way as possible. So we need to stop talking, and we need to start connecting to our bodies and really thinking through, what question do I need to really ask that will assist the person to be involved? So the call to action you've got is, after this presentation, is to make yourself as big as possible, as often as you can. Maybe tonight when you walk in the door after this presentation, you might walk in raising your arms like this and say, "Hi, I'm home." I'm not quite sure what reaction you might get. If you do get someone saying, "Have you had an affair?" that is probably some feedback that your gestures are very different from the ones you might have been doing before. And the proposition I've got is, life's just all about self-development. So I wonder if there's some other simple things that you could do to really empower yourself. I love the concept of doing gestures and postures to lift your confidence level, to be very alert to not doing that, because I think the best ideas in life are sometimes the most simple. And I think success in life is a lot about those little one percenters that you do regularly and you really do often. So I'd ask you to go back to your workplaces about this particular idea. Nothing great ever happens until someone becomes passionate about it. Can you guess who that photograph is? Steve Jobs. I just watched his recent DVD called Icon, and he's just a wonderful man who has had to work through many, many disappointments in his career, and a great person that we could all sort of look forward to. So I'd ask you to be passionate about the concept of using your body in a different way, because you can become perhaps the person that you always know you could be. I'm Jeff Stibbart. Thanks for listening to this presentation. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you.